afternoon and welcome back to GSC Executives Podcast with your host, Kate Latai. And today we're pleased to have on Claire Dijkster, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at National Grid ESO. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to get things kind of started off, could you give me a brief background on how you've achieved the position that you're in today?
Yeah, sure. So I studied business and law at uni, and it was one of the courses where you get a year in industry. So you take your third year out to go and work and go back to do your finals. And I went to go and work at a company that was called Transgo, which was the national gas system operator, in a role that was really closely aligned to my degree. Intended to go and do that for a year, and then had big plans to go back to uni, finish my course, and then convert and train to be a lawyer. What actually happened was I did the year out. I really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I stayed working on a part-time basis when I went back to uni to do my finals, and then transferred onto the graduate scheme.
Oh, brilliant.
That was 22 years ago, having intended to go for a year. I've never left. And I've worked my way through a variety of different roles. So the first sort of 10 years was as a regulatory expert. So using my, the skills learned in my degree and applying them into the energy sector. Mm-hmm. And then more recently, I've transitioned. So I went on maternity leave and had a daughter. I came back. I wanted to pivot my career, but I really liked the organisation. So I pivoted into a more operational role. So going from a sort of policy, more strategic, small area into big operational team management on the electricity side of the business. Did that for about 5 years, and then did another pivot and went into sort of corporate strategy and transformation. Did that for about 5 years, and then very recently, in the last couple of years, I took a decision about where I wanted to be within the group. So over the course of my career, my motivations have got much stronger. So I'm really motivated by climate change and decarbonising the energy system. And I'm really motivated by changing the face and nature of the energy industry, making it more diverse. Mm-hmm. And the part of the National Grid group that I work in, so the electricity system operator, is about to transition out of National Grid and move into a government-owned organisation, and it will be responsible for creating the plans to deliver a decarbonised energy system. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted to work in that part of the group. I'd worked there before I wanted to come back. So I joined the system operator 2.5 years ago, and then took up my executive position at the start of this year.
Oh, brilliant. I love how, I feel like how you said, obviously you kind of gone back to uni thinking originally, oh yes, I'm going to go into law, but I feel nothing ever goes to plan, does it really?
No, not at all. And I'd have loved to have been a lawyer, but I'd have never, if you could have said this is what you were going to do, I'd have never have, onto the things that I've been involved in and things, I'd never have guessed that.
And the fact that you've been able to kind of pivot while still being in the same company as well is amazing. So you're always kind of looking for the next challenge, which is great.
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to do that.
So how come, obviously you described there how you took a placement year out, how come the energy sector?
If I'm being really honest, it was because it was quite close to my university.
So more for ease.
I was working at the time, so I'm not from a particularly affluent background. So I worked all the way through uni. Mm-hmm. I'd got a part-time. Sounds crazy. I'd got a part-time job at the time, which I didn't want to give up. So I carried out just a a Saturday job type thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to still be quite close. The team that I went into on my placement year was the regulatory team. So it's a real mix between needing to understand the business and then applying legal type principles. So in terms of being able to use my business and law degree, it was the perfect type of job to do. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it was in energy was just
It
like
just
that
happened.
just happened at the
You
time.
applied for quite a few in the kind of
Yeah, I
you know.
applied. I also applied to a feed manufacturer and a helicopter manufacturer at the time. I ended up in energy.
And it's clearly been successful. So.
Yeah, and I stayed there because it was a big company, and at the time I'd very much got in mind that I wanted. I come from a background where people tend to go into a job for life, so they would leave school and go to somewhere, and that's where they would work. And I'd got that in my head, and I knew I could do that at this organisation. So
Mhm.
that's the original rationale. As I said, over time it's changed, and all of those original motivations don't exist anymore. And now it is much more about want to work in energy because it's exciting, it's challenging, it's really at the heart of achieving net zero. So that's why I've stayed.
Yeah, kind of, I guess your knowledge has broadened of it, therefore kind of you got more passionate about it because you didn't have that knowledge before.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So obviously you're Chief Strategy Officer at ESO. What are the most important qualities for an effective leader, and how would you describe your management style?
I think so. I think it depends. So it's really been said too many times, so it loses meaning. But the most important thing to be is authentic. So, like, I've been around for long enough to have experienced, old school leadership, which was very directive, very separated from the employees. And, yeah, I mean, when I started, there were still executive dining rooms and things. Like, the senior leaders were completely separate from the rest of the organisation. And I think the world has changed
Yeah.
now. Right? People expect different things, but you spend a lot of time at work, and it's important that you're able to come to work and be yourself and have fun, enjoy it, be challenged. And I think the leadership setting that tone is really important. So a leader being authentic and being who they are, which then creates an environment where people can feel comfortable being themselves, is really important.
Yeah.
There's lots of other things as well. Like I read a quote the other day, and I can't remember, but it's something about the quieter you are as a leader, the better you are, because it means you're listening.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, so listening, for lots of different reasons, whether that's giving someone space to be able to talk through what they're thinking, or actually not assuming that because you're a leader you know everything, because actually most of the time the leaders know the least.
Yeah, it's
in
who
the
you
room.
surround yourself with.
Yeah, and really listening and bringing in lots of opinions. Like that's a really good quality of a leader, is being able to pull people together,
Mhm.
give everyone the space, and sort of foster that group conversation to come to a better place, rather than, I'm the leader, so I know.
So I know all the answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, as you say, you probably don't, and it's the team that surrounds you which will help you kind of together come up with hopefully the right answer to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are also some things that are specific to being a female leader. So when I came up through my career, it was quite male dominated. Like the engineering industries generally are, especially the closer you get to operations.
Mhm.
In my career, I had 2 to 3 senior females who made a massive difference to me, both just in terms of the general support they gave me, but interventions that they made in my career and help that they gave me. And I always felt an obligation to give that back. And as I feel a real, like I get a great sense of purpose from it as a leader, being able to give to others what I was given through my career.
That's fantastic that you kind of had those kind of leaders for you to be able to kind of look up to and aspire to as well, which is great.
Yeah, I'm really lucky, because I know there are people my age who've worked in industries where there are no senior leaders, female leaders, and I've been really lucky to have that, and have really amazing ones as well.
And you followed it, doing amazing as well. So how would you say that you motivate your employees?
I try really hard to understand people,
Mhm.
whether that, and there's a difference to the extent to which you can do it. So for my direct teams,
Yeah.
I do try to get to know people. So if I come into a new team or if I get someone new join my team, the first thing I always do is try and understand them as a person. So before we talk about, work things, it's like, well, what's important to you? What do you do outside of work? And really try to get a feel for what motivates them.
Yeah.
So that then when I'm working with them, I can adapt how I'm talking to them about things or opportunities that I'm giving to people based on their motivations. So, if I know someone's really enjoying the job they're in, they really want to pivot to something else, I'll see if I can put them in situations that gives them a bit of that stretch and challenge that helps prepare them for a move.
Yeah.
But it keeps their interest in where they are. When you're thinking about, like, as a leader, you need to think about the individuals, but you're also sort of thinking teams and organizations as well. And it's not dissimilar. So kind of thinking about the organization as a whole and the culture of the organization, and then the different cultural elements of different parts of it. So we're somewhere between sort of 1,700, 1,900 people. We've got a very strong culture in our organisation, but also within it, there are separate bits that have their own sort of little culture as well. So understanding those and understanding the motivations that align to that helps. Because one of the things that's really important as a leader is not to expect teams or other people to adapt to you. Like, your job as a leader is to adapt to the other and be able to set out why we're doing what we're doing and explain things in a way that resonates with people. So
it's really great how you're able to go into kind of so much depth, and that you're wanting to learn about, well, the whole company and how they work. So you're able to kind of, as well, motivate them all, and not just within the teams be doing well on specific projects, but overall as a company. So it's really inspiring. So what is your long-term strategic vision for ESO, and how do you inspire your staff to fulfill this vision?
So I mentioned really briefly at the start, we're at an incredibly exciting point in our journey. So we're currently part of a large multinational group, and we're a business unit operating within it. The strategic vision that we've been operating under for the last few years is actually to separate out from that group and become a completely different entity. So I mentioned we're transforming the business to be something different, and we are transferring the business into government ownership. So we'll become an arm's length public body. And at the minute, we're responsible for keeping the lights on. So historically, our vision has been, we're responsible to keep the lights on. What does that mean today, tomorrow, and in 5 to 10 years' time? In our new role, so we're transforming into a company that will be called the National Energy System Operator. Our purpose there is to decarbonise the energy system in GB. So to think about what that means and how you get there, and then work with government and with industry and local communities and householders to make sure there's actionable plans to get that in place. So our vision is to be at the centre of that and bring our technical expertise that we've got from operating the power system, but expand and build on that to understand what people want from the energy system, what businesses are doing, so how they want to evolve and expand their businesses, what government policy wants to achieve, and then bring all of that together and say, okay, this is the plan for the energy system, this is how you achieve it.
So very exciting things to come, definitely.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
A lot of communication between, kind of, as you say, all parties to be able to come up with a plan.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
So what is the toughest decision you've had to make during your professional career, would you say?
There's lots. Probably the toughest decision I've had to communicate was around 7-8 years ago. In the UK, we still had quite a few coal power stations that were generating electricity on a daily basis. And very quickly, the economic situation of those stations changed. And they were being very viable, ongoing commercial businesses to, in the very short term, not having a clear future.
Right. Okay.
And I mean, this literally happened over like a week. And we, as this system operator for the power system at the time, undertook a piece of work to look at if all of these power stations closed within months, what would the impact be on people at homes that were using the power? So without those coal power stations, could you still keep the lights on?
Yeah.
And we did all of this in a rapid piece of work. And the outcome of it was that we couldn't lose all of them, but we didn't need all of them. So then we ran a competitive process to determine what the outcome would be. At the end of that process, I had to give some really bad news to some physician. And you would kind of think, well, it's just a business decision, right? So, you know, you're talking to someone quite senior at a different company saying, I'm really sorry, we've run this competitive process, you've not been successful. Why it was particularly hard was actually a lot of the businesses in the energy sector they become families. So things like a coal power station or a gas power station, people do tend to go and work on those sites for life. So they become little families. And in reality, the decision for us was which power stations had been successful in this competitive tender. The decision for them was whether all of these people were going to lose their jobs or not.
Yeah.
And having to tell the person on the other end of the phone that they hadn't been successful and understanding the implications of that.
Of course, that they have to then go on and tell their employees.
Yeah, that they were going to lose their jobs and actually lose them quite quickly. It had an added element in that one of the particular power stations was actually in the next town to my hometown, and it's the centre of the key. And I'd actually had family members talking to me about it over the weekend, and it was all commercially confidential, so I couldn't share what was going on. But I was just like, oh my God, this is so hard. Like, and you know, it was the right thing to do. And I was, in a way, it was quite exciting because you could see what was going to happen, which was that was going to kickstart the UK being the fastest decarbonising power system in the world.
Yeah.
But the reality of that and people losing their jobs was really hard. It was that was probably the hardest individual conversation I've ever had to have with someone.
Oh, definitely. Because as you say, the amount of lives that it's going to affect, and the fact that it's kind of got even more of a personal touch with one of them being in the town next to you as well. Like, you know, personally from kind of friends, family, how much it's going to affect them. So, but as you say, you've done all the checks for it. So sadly, those decisions do have to be made at some point. Yeah. So I'm interested on the flip side of that, to make it a bit happier. What would you say your greatest achievement is?
So probably I'm going to be really cheeky and have two things. So one on a sort of professional work basis. So so the implication of that really difficult situation was not that long after that, I moved roles and was running an operational team at our control centre, which is near Reading. And so to get a picture in your mind, it's a little bit it's a little bit like the NASA control room. So if you think of the NASA control room with a big screen on the wall, and then curved desks with people working away and looking at the screens, it's like that on a smaller scale. It's really cool.
Oh, wow.
So I was running a team there. So you can broadly split the activities on that particular site down to three things. So you've got the people in the control room who are actually keeping the lights on, like they do the really clever, really difficult stuff, but keeping the lights on second by second. You've then got all the engineers who are doing all of the prep to get to that moment, to make sure from a physics basis or an engineering basis that the system will actually run.
Yeah.
And have a bunch of people who are saying, are we doing that in the most efficient way for bill payers? So how do we do that at least cost?
Yeah.
And I used to run the least cost side of things.
Uh-huh.
And we had a situation one day where we had done lots of work to work out whether we could run the system without the coal power stations, because we knew that they would eventually close, but at the time they were critical to the running of the system. We'd done all the work, we'd signed off all the policies, we hadn't actually done it, and there was a real nervousness. Like, they've been around for a long time, and it's, for those people that are sat on the desk that are keeping the lights on day to day, such a big change like that is such a big thing for them, because there's a real direct link between what they're doing and what happens for the country.
Yeah, we need the lights on.
Yeah. And we had this situation one day where we were going to run without the coal nearly. So it was going to be there for the last hour of the day.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, this could be it. This could be it. We could run for 24 hours without it. So all the work had been done. So actually all I really did was run around the office and get everyone lined up to say, if we do it,
are you ready?
Are you ready? and we looked, we determined that the operational conditions would allow it. And so we optimized the system. So we basically finalized all the plans for the operation that day that would allow the coal not to run, which then enabled, sounds really silly, but it enabled us to tweet to say, this is the first 24 hours since the Industrial Revolution where GBE has run with no coal. It was top trending tweet in London that day. It got retweeted by Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Wow.
And it just set off a cascade of events. So we went from that first day to then we ran a couple of days, to then we ran a week, then we ran a month. And we are just about to, on the 1st of October, the last coal station is closing. And that is a result of what happened that day. So being able to be involved in that is just huge, and I'm so proud. It's like my claim to fame. So I'm so proud of that.
It's being part of history. The fact that you've been able to do that, it's such an iconic moment.
When I'm old and I've sat by the fire with a blanket on my knee, we'll light fires then. Sat by an electric heater or a hydrogen burner or something, telling my grandkids about it. I'll be like, I did that. The other side of it is, I mentioned earlier that I feel a real strong need to give back to people the support that I had through the organisation. I've got a little stack of cards in my desk at home which people have sent to me when something big has happened in their life. So some of them are like, they went for a promotion, I coached them through it, they got it, and they've sent me a thank you note. I've got some that have said, you won't remember this, but 2 years ago you had this conversation with me and it changed my perspective, and now I'm doing this. I've got one that's really particularly pertinent, which I won't go into the full reasons why, but there was one lady who worked for me who'd got a really clear ambition of where she wanted to get to, wasn't quite sure how to do it, and I coached her through an interview and then coached her through her pay negotiation, and she got a massive pay rise. And she sent me a text saying, I've made it to the mothership and look at the pay rise I got. And I keep all of those. So I just say I've got a stack of them at home. And the first bit, the coal bit, that's why I come to work in the sector that I do. And the second bit is, that's why I come to work doing the job that I do, because being able to have that
personal touch to it. And the fact, well, you said a stack, you've clearly helped a lot of people, so that's amazing. So congratulations. And so how do you continue to develop your professional skills, and is there a specific skill that you'd like to improve on?
Probably diplomacy would be the one that I would like to improve on. So I'm really hot-headed. I'm very driven by gut instinct, and I'm quite fast-paced. So I'll grab at things and move at them. I'm like I've grown up over time, so I've learnt to manage. But I still now look around at people that I still have role models. I still look at people I work with, and I was just like, oh, they're so good. They're so good at
people,
managing that conversation, or not immediately jumping in and sort of. And I was just like, oh, I'd love to be more diplomatic. So that's probably the thing that I'm always working on, and anyone who knows me will laugh because they'll agree with that straight away. I've probably done a mixture of So we talked about like career pivots. So I've done 2 big career pivots within my time.
Yeah.
But I have moved roles quite frequently as well because I really like to feel stretched. I don't like feeling like I'm treading water. So once I feel like that, I tend to look for a new challenge. And I have moved around, yes, within the same group, but I've worked on electricity, I've worked on gas, I've worked in the UK, I've worked in European issues. I've worked in operational engineering type roles. I've worked in policy roles. I like to do new stuff. I like to learn. So I've always done that. As I've got more senior, I've done more thinking more specifically about what do I want to adjust and learn, say, and I've maybe done. So I did an executive diploma a couple of years ago because the area where I'm least comfortable talking about is like numbers, and I just don't find them interesting. I like words.
You're
I
like a
like
numbers person,
Yeah.
a words person.
Yeah, and I like words. I like books, and I like words, and I like you give me a massive legal document, I will happily read that.
Of
Give me a
course.
spreadsheet. I'm like trying to find someone else to do it. But I did a financial strategy diploma because I was like, look, if I want to be in a senior position, I need to be able to understand what people are talking about and ask the right questions. So I've done stuff like that as well, where I've gone, look, I have got a gap here and I'm going to go and do some training. But probably, like I say, I am a words and stories, so I relate more to people and watching people and how they operate and learning from that, and then understanding what I do and I don't like and do that, rather than the formal training is not my thing particularly. I've kind of do it to fill particular gaps, but I like watching people. I like watching people and understanding how they operate and why. And
Yeah, it's kind of a bit more learning on the job rather than from the textbook sort of thing.
Yeah, and I've always actually yesterday I was walking down the office and I heard this voice. You know, sometimes you hear a voice and you know who it is just because you've heard the voice for so long. And it just made me smile because it was someone in my team who was explaining something to an industrial placement student. So someone was on a year out from their degree. And that same person sat with me when I was a graduate and explained things, and I went over and I was like, oh, it's so funny hearing you explain that. And I was like, because you did that for me. And like, I've always preferred sitting with someone and getting them to explain things to me rather than, reading through training material.
Because you can ask questions.
Yeah. And you remember the person and you can remember how they've told you about something rather than like reading something really dry, doing e-training modules and things.
Yeah. It's a lot more interactive, isn't it? So would you describe yourself as a risk taker? And could you describe some of the risks that you've taken? Obviously, you mentioned when we kind of changed over, but was there any other risks at all? Or?
Yeah, I think I probably am quite a risk taker. So I'm definitely not risk averse.
Yeah.
I'm more, which is unusual, like say, NESOs with transforming into, and because of the nature of what we do, keeping the lights on, you would expect that we're quite a risk averse organisation.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are, and actually for the jobs that they're doing, that's absolutely the right thing. I've always been more risk tolerant, but I would probably say so I'm quite comfortable with ambiguity and understanding what I can control and what I can't. And for the things that I can't control, understand, well, how will I know what's happening with them? How can I spot if they're going off? And I think those things together make me quite risk tolerant, because I'm just like, well, I've got those bits under control. These bits are really uncertain and I'm not sure, but I'm confident that we could spot it and it would be okay if it started to go off track. So all in all, I'm happy to take the risk. I'm quite like that anyway. Again, quite like that in my personal life as well as my professional life. I don't tend to revisit things, so I'm not a look back and chew over decisions. I kind of like it was the right
Head
thing
forward.
at the time. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I'm the same. I feel as long as you, as you say, you can't control everything, but as long as you've kind of got somewhat of a plan in place and you're able to, as you say, spot if things aren't going your way, then you're able to kind of sort it out as soon as possible to get it going straight on track. Yeah. So obviously being in a senior position that you're in a very male dominated industry, how has this impacted you, if it has at all?
So it's changed a lot. Actually, at NISO, we're so. Oh, I should have checked this. So our executive, I think, off the top of my head, is more female than male. And actually, across the organisation, we've got great representation. It's not 50-50, but it is good. And actually, for an engineering firm and the energy sector, it's really good.
Yeah.
There's more to be done. So I think there's particularly still more to be done in terms of, for the people that want to, how do you support them through from sort of more junior grades into the senior roles? And when I look back, I mean, when I was very early in my career, it was still quite. I mean, I remember going out onto site and there weren't females on site. It's just men. So you couldn't malfitting PPE, so personal protective equipment. So you'd be in boots and overalls that just didn't fit. So you'd be walking around looking like a clown because
Like
you really
safe school.
yeah, humongous overalls. There would only be one toilet on site. So I remember turning up to a site once, and the foreman on site saying, "Do you need the toilet?" And I was like, "Oh."
I might do. I don't know.
I was like, "I'm probably okay." And he's like, "Because we cleaned it this morning because you were coming, and I've not let any of the men use it, and then we'll bust it. So can you just use it, and then I can let them use the toilet?" Or going out to site and them saying, "Oh, would you like a cup of tea?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that'd be lovely." And then they'd slam a mug on the table in front of you that's still got a tea bag floating in it. Just like, it was just yeah, exactly. It's just like a different world. It's a long time since it's been like that. I still think it's difficult. So I still think in a lot of areas, particularly if you've got other responsibilities outside of work, so if you're a parent or a carer or something like that, quite a lot of the time the lion's share of those responsibilities does fall to female.
Yeah.
And if you're at the sort of middle management point of your career and you're thinking about going into a senior level, you do have to make choices. So there's no point pretending that, you can, that nothing changes.
Of course,
it
yeah.
does, and you have to make choices. And I think that can be really difficult. I think it can be really difficult if you don't get paid the same as male counterparts and you don't have the financial stability to, I don't know, employ a cleaner, so that that's one less thing that you're worrying about.
Yeah.
I certainly thought quite hard about those types of things when I sort of went through the transition that I thought was that real point from I'm kind of still an employee and things into the expectations on me are different.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that there was anything that was stopping me. It's just society is set up that way.
Yeah.
Again, that has changed now. So I think the world is different. And actually one of the biggest things that's changed has been flexible parental leave, because making it, and we try really hard in NISO to do this, but making it equally acceptable for a new dad to take parental leave because that's what makes the difference. It's like when things are shared.
Yeah. If the mother is kind of more senior, then they're both able to do it. But I guess it is such a big decision to make if you are going from that kind of managerial position to more senior, because it's not just affecting you, it's affecting your whole family.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure that you've got the support of the company that you're in that can help you, as you say, get a cleaner at home so you can do some more hours at work and then be able to see your family and things like that as well. So
yeah. And the biggest thing that I learned was not to feel guilty. So whatever you do, you make choices.
Yeah.
And I'm a strong believer in you make the choices and then you have to own them. And there's no point making a choice and then either feeling guilty about it or saying, well, I was forced to make this choice. You have to own the choice. So I made choices.
Yeah.
And, I owned those choices. So I mean, I still feel guilty. I still feel guilty when I don't make it sports day or something. I shouldn't beat myself up about it.
Yeah, yeah. You try to make it to everything, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be the odd time that you do miss something, whether it be for work or, I don't know, like as you say, with your slip disc in your back, you can't help some things, some things. So
yeah,
and
exactly.
So it's one of those things you've just got to keep looking forward and not feel own your decision. Yeah.
I completely agree. I still have times now where I'm the only female in the room, and I go to things, and it's particularly there's still quite a lot of things where it's like people that have retired, and I was just like, when I was younger, that used to really bother me, and I used to really worry about whether I was validly in the room or not. And so now I just roll my eyes, and it's just, depending on the circumstance of the meeting, I'll either call them out on it or I'll roll my eyes and stuff. And it's just like, that's a privilege that comes with being more senior. Like, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very much of like it's your problem. It's your problem that you've got a room full of men. It's not mine. So
yeah,
it's going to do.
I'm happy to. I'm very happy being here, and a strong, independent woman. So
yeah.
So, why do you think it's such an important topic of discussion, diversity and inclusion?
I guess I boil it down to two things. One is that, so we've talked a lot about the energy sector, where energy is so integral to everything that we do, whether it is switching the light on or boiling the kettle or being able to get to work or looking on Instagram or whatever. It's all dependent on energy. And we're going through this massive transition. So the UK is like a global leader in decarbonising its energy system.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a whole load of choices that have to be made. Like things have to be paid for. There's choices to be made about technologies and things. And it would be the wrong thing to do for there to be a bunch of like clever people sat in a room somewhere making those decisions on behalf of society as a whole. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that in the organisations that are doing the thinking and the work and the decision making, that they represent the societies that we serve, whether that's gender balance or regional representation or ethnicity, whatever it is. It's just like, if you've got one type of people making decisions, one, the decisions will be really bad because they'll have a really narrow perspective. But two, they're not making the right decisions for the society that we're here to serve. We're here to serve the country. Won't make the right decisions. The other side of it is there's so many people with such amazing talents, and so in the energy sector, like engineering's really at the core of it. Mm-hmm. And we've got such amazing engineering expertise in this country. Mm-hmm. But the world's moving at a pace, and there's also really like awe-inspiring data scientists and cybersecurity experts and others who play an equally important role. Yeah. And we need to create the environment where all of those people come into the sector and they move through to positions of influence. That doesn't necessarily mean executive level or senior, but they are able to fully provide their expertise and skills. And if you don't have a diverse and inclusive culture, it's really difficult for anyone who's a bit different to the old way of doing things to make that contribution. Yeah, definitely. As you say, you can't be kind of narrow-minded about it. It needs to represent the full country or kind of the full diversity of the world or whatever. Yeah. So what key obstacles do you think prevent companies from achieving diversity and inclusion? So my tongue-in-cheek answer would be boards of all men trying to create and sign off diversity policies. Just to say that it's true. It's just a bit rude. Partly, it is difficult. Like this. Everyone is different. So it's not like there's one answer where you could say, okay, if you do these three things, you'll have a diverse and inclusive culture. And by the very nature of it, you've got to be flexible to be able to embrace a whole mass of different perspectives and experiences and people. And that's quite hard to do
Yeah, especially kind of for such large organisations.
Yeah,
Help, yeah.
and being able to understand how you do that and how you can take actions that make positive differences
Yeah.
quickly, I think is really difficult
Mhm.
for people to, but people do it, so it's not impossible. And I think being open-minded and asking the experts as well. So it's not,
Yeah.
it's not something where you can sit around the table and go, we need to be better at this, so let's come up with some ideas. There are lots of people who really understand how to make change. So
Mhm.
it's like, why would you try and come up with a plan yourself? It's like, ask someone who knows, who's seen it work before. And there's lots of examples of where it's worked
Mhm.
really well. But it's difficult because you need to change the whole culture of the organization that
Mhm.
you're in, and that is really daunting. So
Yeah, and I think some companies kind of have it as kind of a backseat thing that they'll do bits of it, but don't actually really kind of have all guns blazing for it. But for something like diversity and inclusion, you do need to have that team around you to kind of help push it, because it isn't an overnight process, as you say. It does take time, but it's making sure you have those experts who you can ask to be like, how can I do this? How can I help evolve the culture of the business? Yeah. So, what are the long-term consequences if we ignore or fail to recognize diversity and inclusion?
we just we just won't. There's just so much opportunity which would fall by the wayside. So
Yeah.
I like, it's really, really old hat now, but there is a really old report which was done, I think, by McKinsey, which talks about how diverse boards make better decisions than non-diverse boards.
Hmm.
And like, there's rafts of research around that, just showing that by bringing in different voices, you
Yeah.
make better decisions. So the opposite of that is, if you don't embrace diversity and inclusion, you just wait. If you're a commercial company, you won't make the best commercial decisions. You won't attract the best people to come and work for you. You won't be operating at the potential of the organization, because you won't be able the full potential out of your people.
Hmm.
I was just going to say, I'd be really surprised if there's anyone who doesn't realise that actually there probably are people
Yeah.
that still
It's still some people, I'm
still
sure, out
stuck in
there.
it's the way that things have happened in the past works just fine. So why would you change? The world is changing. The world is changing, and it's changing so quickly. Like, as we talked about when I first started. So when I first started working, you still had smoking carriages on the train. There was no such thing as a smartphone. I think I did I get an email address after I worked? There certainly weren't laptops, so everyone worked on desktops
It had the dial-up.
in the office. Yeah, dial-up modems. Like, the world has changed massively
Yeah.
in 20 years. It's changed massively in 10 years. And the only thing that's certain is that that change is going to continue. And actually, it's changing quicker than it has done previously.
Yeah.
So trying to do things the way we've always done them just isn't going to work going forward. So, and if you don't embrace, you know, younger people or different perspectives or different experiences, like, the hard facts of it is your business will fail.
Yeah.
Because it won't be competitive. You won't attract the best people.
Mhm.
You won't be competing with others in the marketplace.
Yeah, and as you say, your competitors will be, and they'll be taking all your clients. Or yeah,
Yeah.
so it needs to be done. Yeah. So are there any changes you would like to bring to the industry at all?
I mean, so there's still pockets. So there's a great organization called Powerful Women
Hmm.
who publish a State of the Nation report every year, and they publish stats on the senior leadership, executive and board representation in the industry. And that shows it's been great progress, but there is a long way to go.
Yeah.
I would really like to see senior representation of females, and like just better representation at a senior level across the whole industry. So it's not
Hmm.
so it's not the outlier anymore. It's just the norm. Like, I would like to not get asked to go and speak somewhere, and the first thing that I do is email back and say, can you tell me the other speakers? And if they're all men, I'll say no. It's like, I'm not going to be your token female on a panel, so you either do a proper representative panel or I'm not speaking. And the men in our organisation do that too. So if they get invited to speak somewhere and it is all men, they refuse, so they won't speak at all male events.
Yeah, because I feel like quite a few times people will be like, oh, well, just have an event and have a guest speaker who is diverse, but I'll only need one just because, then, right, I've covered that. That's kind of ticky box sort of thing, rather than actually, as you say, representing the whole industry that you're in. Because it's just because you've got one person there doesn't mean that that's a clear representation. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and there's lots of things I would like to, these are all really silly, but they make a difference. Like, I would like not to be invited to loads of sporting events. It's like, I quite like going to like watch sports, but it's such an old school way of doing things. Like, oh, we're doing this. Would you? I just like, no, I don't want to go to that. I would like not to be talking about this. I would like it not to be an issue, so that we don't have to talk about it.
That it's just the norm, that diversity and inclusion is just everyone's equal. That's fine. So that it's not a topic that needs to be talked about. Yes, as you say.
Yeah, and if people can go to work and they feel like they've got equal opportunities, that they then choose to do what they were like. This isn't about getting everyone up to executive level, because very few people actually want to do that. It's like, but if everyone feels like they have an equal opportunity to go for things, whatever it is they want to do, and that there aren't any unfair hurdles in place, that's what I'd like to see. We are a long way from that, but I think we are in a place where we accept that that is the reality, and we've moved into, and we're starting to tackle it. So we're on the right path. I'd just like it to see it happen quicker.
I know. Sadly, it can't happen overnight, but hopefully it'll kind of keep moving forward, and hopefully at a quicker pace. So kind of looking back at your career, is there anything that you would change at all?
No, I'm not a regrets person. So I purposely won't allow myself to look back and regret things.
That's good.
Because you get caught in, I will look back and learn things, but not regret. I have never lived and worked in another country. I would have liked to have done that. And it's not that I made an active decision not to. I just didn't make an active decision to do it.
Yeah.
But like, I've still got probably, I don't know, 25 years to work, so I could still do that.
Still time.
Part of me, so I work in an engineering company, and I'm female, and I say to people, I'm not a thing. So I'm not an engineer, I'm not a lawyer. Like, I don't have a professional accreditation. And that used to be a massive chip on my shoulder when I was younger. And I always felt a bit inferior that I was working in an engineering company full of accredited people. And I always felt like I had to prove myself. And at the time, I always toyed with going and doing an accreditation, and I didn't. And I don't regret anything, because actually it made me work hard.
Yeah, because you didn't have it.
Yeah. And actually, I understand now the value that I bring, and that I'm a different person in the room. So I don't regret not doing it. I probably regret a little bit the amount of time that I let that bother me, because it did bother me a lot.
Yeah. But I guess kind of with that kind of confidence comes with age. So kind of having confidence within yourself and of your skills, and kind of, as you say, reflecting back now, showing that you didn't need that accreditation to be as successful as you are today. I think, everyone's got their own path to where they are. So whether you've got the accreditation or not, you deserve to be where you are today, and you're obviously doing an amazing job. So congratulations.
Yeah, well, and on the theme of diversity, at least part of that is because I don't have the same qualifications as the majority of other people, so I think about things differently. I mean, normally from a really simple kind of like the somewhat highly qualified, really clever engineer who understands a really technical comp, and I'm like asking very stupid, basic questions, but that's the skill that I bring.
Exactly, but then it's the team that you surround yourself with. They're the experts that obviously know all about the equipment, and then you're there for obviously other reasons, and collectively as a team you're then able to make the right decisions. So
Yeah. And 9 times out of 10 the questions that I ask are stupid, but one question in 10 is actually the really clever, insightful one that makes everyone go, oh yeah, okay. So.
As long as you get that one
for the 1 in 10.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Claire, for being on the podcast. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for letting me whittle on for the time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the GSC Executives Podcast. Today's conversation was hosted and recorded by Caitlin Tighe, with editing and production managed by Stephen Smith. The podcast is produced by GSC Executives in conjunction with Daniel Owen Limited. For more details about our executive search solutions, as well as upcoming episodes, please visit our website, gscexecutives.co.uk. If you're keen to hear more industry insights, please consider subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Until next time, continue to lead with excellence.